Hi. So what happened was in 2023 on Christmas Day, my mother, Marika Gous, passed away under suspicious circumstances. Now it was a very confusing period for us and it was very shocking. So we didn't really know what happened and what caused it. But after further investigation and further digging, we found out a lot of things that we need answers for, that her friends are they're also looking for answers, and it's just shocking, really. And I mean, the community was impacted by what had happened. So my mom worked for NLD 24. She was a pharmacy technician for a while, so she was a very independent woman. She worked hard for many years, and the community loved her because she was so friendly and compassionate. Now, when I matriculated, her husband kept disturbing her at work. Her husband was my stepfather, so he kept disturbing her at work and wanted her to stay at home to support him instead. But he started abusing alcohol and anxiety medicine, and then he even threatened to commit suicide on occasion. So after my mom's brother and mother died in 2015 and 2018, she was going through a difficult period in her life. And she felt that her husband didn't support her. He only criticized her. Now, there was already a lot of tension at this stage. And that's why by 2019, she wanted to divorce her husband. But unfortunately, his family and their attorney would constantly step in and block it and, try to delay everything because they didn't want her. They were married in community property and they didn't want her to gain anything. And he would just disappear and then let his family and the attorney handle all of that. Now, in December 2023, she managed to find a buyer for their apartment because she and her husband and their family wanted to sell this apartment for years. So they managed to find a buyer. Now, it was around the 12th December, I think, that they signed the sale agreement. And then just 2 weeks after that, she passed away. I found out from her friends and other people involved that she was seeing a divorce attorney. So she was still trying to get divorced, and her next step would be to move on with her life. She just needed some money to go out there on her own, and she was trying to start a business. That I remember because I was trying to help her with that. And it's after years, her husband threatened her about selling this property, and then just 2 weeks later she passed away. Now, when my grandfather and I went to see the detective in January 2024, the detective immediately said that it was a civil case. He said it was for the attorneys. Now, this is strange because it's supposed to be a criminal matter. It's an unnatural death, but he immediately jumped to those conclusions. And when we told him, something's not right about this, because there were a lot of details that didn't make sense. How did she was trying to get divorced? How is this a civil matter? He said then he was worried about his pension. So the details were at the time that on the autopsy report, and according to the detective, that she overdosed. So they made it look like a suicide scene. And this is just everything about it wasn't right. So we spoke to the forensic pathologist, and he said that he didn't really find much on her. He couldn't see much, but he just said, don't overthink it. Wait for the blood tests and the toxicology report. That takes about 5 years. So wait 5 years and then you'll find out what happened to your mom. But in the meantime, I'm going to put alleged overdose on the report for her cause of death. And then I kept asking him about it, some details that didn't make sense. And then he said, well, women tend to commit suicide on Christmas. That's just what they do. At that stage, I was just shocked, Like, how can a pathologist say something like this? I mean, just imagine all the women out there, who get murdered, and you have a pathologist like this, and they just say, women tend to die over the holidays. They do that. We should just ignore it. So I was obviously very upset, my family as well, my mom's friends, and we wanted answers. So we kept going back to the police. They promised they would investigate. They would they would look into what happened, but, that just went nowhere. Then we found messages from my mom that were clearly indicated that her husband and his family and their lawyer plotted against her for years. For example, around New Year's in 2020, she suspected her husband and his family put drugs in her drinks. I have this message. It was sent to the police and the NPA. And a few weeks later, after New Year's in 2020, she found messages on her husband's phone from his sister, the boyfriend, and the attorney that they knew how to get rid of her if her husband wanted to arrange that. There was also mention of a 2-month agreement. They said something like, either you make a move or must I make a move, and they wanted to take her blood for something as well. Then her sister started, his sister, my stepfather's sister, started harassing my mom via text messages and said she's a drug addict. And they frequently harassed her, stole things out of her apartment. They broke locks and things. So she opened a theft case, she opened a harassment case, abuse case at the police, but nothing was done. And they even showed up with this lawyer at the apartment, and while her husband was physically abusing her. And then they forced her to stay in the apartment with her husband. So there was abuse going on, physical and emotional abuse for years. And the family was abusing my mom too. In the apartment in Gqeberha. It was years of abuse. And there were, there's photos, and you could see the bruises on her face, and there were cuts and burns and everything on her legs as well. And the funny thing is, the forensic pathologist claimed there were no signs of abuse. Everything was fine. Your mom must have just overdosed because women tend to commit suicide on Christmas. It's just unacceptable, because besides that, some of the primary evidence that was found was there were a lot of pill containers around her body and in her bra as well, but they were unlabeled, firstly. So, who's going to, if somebody commits suicide, who's going to take the labels off the containers, swallow all the pills, and then yes, the pathologist during the autopsy didn't find any pills. He didn't find any pills at all. There was nothing to test. He didn't find any pills inside her body. He didn't find pills outside. Just these unlabeled containers that disappeared. So there's no trace of that either now. Another thing was the ambulance, the paramedics arrived on Christmas at night. They saw there were pills. They put it in their report. They saw there were tablets in my mom's mouth. Now, they said she had been lying on the floor for hours. She had been deceased for hours. Now, there were undissolved tablets in her mouth. and these also disappeared. The pathologist never found these pills, never saw any signs in the mouth that there were any pills in the mouth, so no coloration, anything like that. And the police also included it in their report, and the pathology lab manager. There were tablets in her mouth, but it disappeared. So somebody threw it away, but that was supposed to be evidence, So no trace of pills, no signs of abuse. There was a cut on her head in the medical reports. That wasn't declared in the autopsy either. So everything was just in the autopsy report. It was like everything's perfectly fine. We don't see anything wrong. She just swallowed pills, move on with your life. That's basically the message that was sending. So we weren't happy with that. We went to consult, overseas forensic experts. And we also spoke to others, of course, in South Africa as well. And they all told us the same thing. There had never been any case of pills ending up in someone's mouth, especially hours after they passed away. It wouldn't just lie there undissolved. It's pretty obvious somebody put them there to make it look like a suicide, especially with the unlabeled containers that also disappeared. All disappeared, this evidence, so, and it's all strange. And then there were the signs of abuse as well. So already that would count as foul play. So some of the forensic experts produced reports saying it was foul play, but the police just wouldn't take it further. They just wouldn't go. They wouldn't really question the husband. They wouldn't care. And that's the other thing. He left the day after his wife died. After he obviously killed his wife, he left PE. He went to. They said he went to St. Francis or something like that, but nobody actually checked where he was. Nobody cared. So that left us in a difficult situation for a long time. Now, the other thing was that in 2024, I still wanted to get some of my things, my possessions, and my family wanted to do the same. For example, my grandfather. And we asked the detective about that, and he just wasn't willing to help us. So we had to go to court to get a letter, and then we went to that detective's line commander, and he told us he's just not going to help us with that. We should pretend that my stepfather was just never in the apartment. My mother probably would have died anyway. So I don't know where that came from, but then, we did what he said. Take the letter and go to the apartment and get our possessions. That's our personal belongings that were in that apartment. And then, when we saw, people were moving things, we called the police as well. And we went legally into the premises of the property because I used to live there, and the security and the building manager allowed it. So I went in, I showed the letter to the people who were moving things. They said their boss was inside. Now, I didn't know these people at the time, but it was apparently my stepfather's family. And they came out, threatening me and my wife. And they went crazy. They said they and their attorney would burn and destroy our family and hunt us. And they will take everything we have as well, and all of that. And it's weird. It's like, this is like 3 months, less than 3 months after my mom died. It's a strange way to behave. So then, when speaking to the attorney, he told them to flee the scene. So they left right before the police got there. Then I mistook them for being my stepfather's brother. That's the only guy that I knew at some point. I saw him once. And I told the police officer, call this guy. And then this brother of my stepfather and the attorney, he was also there on the phone. They confessed. They said, yes, they have our possessions. They just won't give it back. you see, now it's a year later, I still don't have those possessions. In fact, what they did after that theft was, because we had a theft case open, they came to my place of residence. They tried to sue my wife, they tried to sue me, and they tried it several times. They also had us followed. They sent people to my grandfather's house to threaten his life. It just kept going on like that last year. And then ultimately, for some reason, they opened a criminal case against us. I think more than one. Now, my 77-year-old grandfather has to go to court often. In February, he has to be in court, and he has to be in court against these people, and they claim my grandfather arrested them, and I arrest them, and they just open a false case full of lies, and the police are willing to assist them with this, but nothing's being done about the murder. Nothing's being done about the theft, harassment against us. We already had an harassment case open. So they're wealthy, they're well connected, and the police are willing to assist them, and just they don't care about us. They don't care about. There were other victims as well. There were other people who got robbed and defrauded by these people. They've been to court. They lost a lot of money. They were. Apparently, my mom, before she was murdered, she found evidence on her husband's computer that they were involved in manufacturing counterfeit, dangerous medical devices. So who knows how many people they may have injured or killed through that as well. So there was a lot of fraud going on, according to what my mom found. She didn't know what was really happening, how they did this. But it seemed very strange to her, and you see, that's why I suppose they killed her. And they also didn't want her to get anything out of the divorce or to move on with her life, so they would lock her in that apartment. And you see, that's where we are now, and we're still waiting for answers. Her friends are waiting for answers, and her friends saw they were witnesses. They saw her getting abused. They saw the bruises, and it's strange how nothing's being done about it. And we can't just live in a country like this where the police and the law enforcement agencies, including even the prosecutors, they're willing to do everything for the well-connected and wealthy, but for the rest of us, apparently they just don't care. So, we are trying to get justice, and we are trying to protect others from having to go through this, especially, at the hands of these dangerous people as well. So hopefully we can get some answers soon. Thank you.